Hey everyone, welcome back to the Social English Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about your friend asks you what you're doing. They call you on their cell phone or K-tie or smartphone, and they ask you, hey, what are you doing right now? That is what we are going to talk about in today's episode of the Social English Podcast. Hikari, kick it off.
皆さんこんにちは。毎日少しずつ社交に使える英語の上達を目指すソーシャルイングリッシュポッドキャストへようこそ。今日はぜひもっと自信を持って英会話してみましょう。Are you ready, Parsi? Let's go!
Hey everybody. Thank you for that introduction, Hikari, as always. And everyone, welcome back to the Social English Podcast, where we help you to improve your spoken, social, communicative English every single day for the Japanese learner. And if you are new to the podcast, please consider subscribing to the podcast as we release a new episode every other day, and there's much valuable information from our podcast. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. If you are back here for another podcast and you're a returning listener, I really appreciate you. Please consider helping the show at patreon.com. But today's episode, we're going to think about your friend from another country, an English speaker, Canada. Let's call him John. And John calls you. He calls you and he asks, hey, what are you doing? Because John wants to spend time with you. So John asks, what are you doing? We are going to give you the response to that question by one of our Japanese learners of English, a listener who asked me to correct his English. So we're going to do that today. We're going to correct his English, and we're going to give you some options on how to finish that sentence and respond to that question. But first, before we do that, just like every episode, I want you to picture yourself and me at a cafe, and you can hear the sounds around you. And we are listening to the people talking around us. Listen to that. Smell the coffee in the air, the sense of the fresh baked croissants. And listen to the coffee pour. Because we are drinking coffee. I'm having probably a mochaccino today. And you're probably having maybe a cappuccino. We're having our favorite snacks. And we're discussing English because I am Percy and I'm your American friend. And you asked me today to meet you for coffee and talk about English. So let's talk English today. We're going to talk some social English. The topic of today is how to respond to your English-speaking friend when they ask you, what are you doing? What are you doing? Okay. Now, this episode is aimed at the medium to high level English learner. But if you are a low-level beginner, please listen. And if you don't understand something, you can rewind the podcast or listen to it at a slower pace at 0.5 speed. So if you have problems, I'm talking too slow, you can speed it up to 1.5 speed. If I am talking too fast, slow it down to 0.5 speed. Okay, so let's get started. All right. Welcome to today's English Repair Shop. Today's topic, again, is how to talk about something. How to talk about what you're doing. Here is the situation. Hey, man, what are you up to? What are you doing now? Hey, man, what are you up to? What are you doing now? These are social English expressions and a question in conversational English to ask you, what are you doing? Okay, we have a listener who asked us to fix his English. So let's listen carefully to the response. This is the wrong English from a Japanese learner of English. Okay, here we go. I'm in a cafe and read a novel. After that, if the weather is fine, I will plan to run around the park. I hope the weather is good. I'm in a cafe and read a novel. After that, if the weather is fine, I will plan to run around the park. I hope the weather is good. Okay. That is the incorrect dialogue that the Japanese learner of English asked me to correct. So what I'm going to do is let's correct this sentence by sentence, one by one. Let's correct this. But first, I want to ask you, the listener, do you hear the mistakes? If you do hear the mistakes, that is good. If you don't hear all the mistakes, that is fine. That is still good. The thing that is important is that you are listening for the mistakes. So let's go through them and talk about them. Okay, so first I will say the Japanese learner of English sentence, then I will say the social English correction. Okay, I'm in a cafe and read a novel. Social English. Right now, I'm in a cafe reading a novel. I'm in a cafe and read a novel. Right now, I'm in a cafe and reading a novel. Okay, so we want to say right now. We want to talk about where you are now and the actions that you're doing now. So you want to say right now, or you want to talk about right now or now. You want to talk about what you are doing at the moment, exactly right now, because what you're going to say afterwards will give more information to the English listener about what you are doing. Okay, this is social English. I'm in a cafe reading a novel. So if you are a medium to high level learner of English or student of English, you know that we use the ending ing on a verb if you are in the action of doing it. So if you are doing something like doing, if it is happening right now as we talk about it, you will use the ing verb ending. Okay, let's go to the next sentence. After that, if the weather is fine, I will plan to run around the park. If the weather is good, I'll run around the park. After that, if the weather is fine, I will plan to run around the park. If the weather is good, I'll run around the park. Okay, let's talk about that. We are going to talk about the next thing that we're doing. When we use the word if, the condition if, we're already talking about the next plan. So the listener understands that we are going to talk about the next plan of action, the next thing we will do. So we don't need to use plan. If the weather is good, I'll run around the park. Okay. So again, you're telling the person based on the past or the present. The present. Now I'm reading a novel. I'll do this thing next. So in the future, I'll do this thing next. Okay, so that's why you do not need to use the word plan. I will plan. That is, you don't need to use that, and that is not said in social English or in conversational English. You don't say, I will plan to do this. It sounds very strange to an English listener. Okay? Now, let's go to the next part. Number 3. I hope the weather is good. I hope the weather is good. Social English. I hope the weather is good. I hope the weather is good. Now, this is fine. This is actually good English. I did not change the last sentence. And I want you to understand sometimes when listeners ask me to fix their dialogues on the Social English podcast, on our English repair episodes, sometimes only one sentence is incorrect. Sometimes all sentences are incorrect. So or sometimes the sentences are mostly correct, but maybe one or two words are wrong. Okay, so you should please remember that everyone listening is always learning. You are always learning English. Okay, you're always getting better and better and better. Especially at the social English aspects of English. So don't worry about learning English, because sometimes you make a mistake here or there, but you as the learner, I want you to relax and enjoy your learning of English, okay? So let me say the entire passage one more time with the corrected social English only. This is the correct English conversational social English version of the question. I will start with the question. Okay, here's your friend John from Canada. Hey man, what are you up to? What are you doing now? Your answer. Right now, I'm in a cafe reading a novel. If the weather is good, I'll run around the park. I hope the weather is good. Okay? One more time. Hey man, What are you up to? What are you doing today? Right now, I'm in a cafe reading a novel. If the weather is good, I'll run around the park. I hope the weather is good. Okay, please listen to the tips that I gave you earlier in this episode, and hopefully I know that they will help you out and you will definitely learn much more social English as you listen and practice your English. Okay, so that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you for spending time with me today. I know that you learned something very valuable from today's lesson. Please practice, okay? Come visit us at realsocialenglish.com, where you can get my free download, the 7 mistakes most Japanese learners of English make and how to fix them. You'll also find more resources to help you get better at English every day. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and now Pandora. Which one is your favorite podcast platform? Just pick one. We're on all of those. Become a patron. Help the show by donating $5 US to help us out. We will show you our thanks by personally thanking you in a future episode. You will also get new content only available there. Join us there at patreon.com/social English. Share our podcast on your social media with your friends and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time. Hikari, please end the show for today.
今日は楽しい時間をありがとうございました。ぜひ私たちのウェブサイト realsocialenglish.com を訪問して日本語訳と役立つ情報を手に入れてください。また次回お会いしましょう。バイバイ。See you next time. Bye bye.